All right, Avis, it's time for another episode of Rob and Avis Ramble. You ready?
Okay.
You ready to do some rambling?
I am.
Yeah. All
I've been
right.
told the rules. No upfront fluff.
No
Straight
front
to the
fluff.
topic today.
Yeah, I know. We kind of we're always talking about just stuff before we kind of get into some kind of topic, and maybe we should stop doing that. I don't think people really care.
Okay.
So, maybe if anybody's interested, they're more interested in the, the meat of the topic, not other weird ancillary stuff we may be talking about. Did you bring a topic?
No, it's not my job.
You never bring a topic.
It's not my job.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. We're gonna. I think we're gonna talk a little bit about jobs.
Oh, okay.
So, I've been having a discussion, kind of ongoing, the last couple of days, off and on, with someone who I can't even remember their X handle. So sorry. It's like be nice sometimes or something like that. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's kind of an interesting.
Be nice sometimes.
What do they mean by that? But the topic of conversation has been, how is conflict resolution handled in a marriage? Was that noise because your coffee's hot, or is that like you don't want to talk about this topic?
No, my coffee is cold.
Okay, I was going to say, because I can't imagine you wouldn't be happy to talk about this topic.
No, I'm just feeling a little attacked. Not from our marriage standpoint, but from other areas in my life. I've been dealing with a little conflict that I'm not happy about.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. There's been some stuff going on the last week or so with things outside of our marriage, and just stuff's going on in normal life that has you a little keyed up.
A little bit.
Yeah. Anyway, so back to conflict resolution. So, this individual, their basic, I've been kind of just pushing on, how do you resolve a conflict in a marriage, right? And they seemingly the best answer they can come up with is, well, you just talk about it until there's a solution. And, what I'm been pushing back on is, well, sometimes that works, but at the end of the day, somebody has to make a decision at some point. And, their problem they have with this is that they don't believe there's any head of the marriage.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess let's talk about that. So what do you think it looks like? Because I won't lead the witness here.
You won't lead the witness. Well, classically, we do talk about it and try to agree. And if we can't, you make the decision.
Yeah. I mean, does it have to be any more complicated than that?
I mean, sometimes it gets more heated than that because we're both passionate about our sides.
Yeah.
If we disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I would say that I just get tired of the conversation and I just quit. Sometimes I'm not like, oh, we can't agree. You should just make the decision.
Yeah. So you're saying you don't always kind of joyfully accept.
Yeah.
But you do ultimately accept.
Yeah. In my rational brain, you make the decision. In the heat of the moment.
In your emotional brain.
Yeah. In the heat of the moment, I might struggle to agree with that.
Yeah. And I think that's what I've been trying to kind of push on with this individual, which is, I think in a healthy marriage, I mean, you can't have any sort of structure without some predefined, organization of who's making the decisions, right? Because this is true of government. This is true of business. I mean, this is true of pretty much every aspect of our life. There's always some person, that is the escalation point, and, that person ultimately is going to have to make a decision one way or another, right? So kind of with that in mind, I think that individual, if we were talking about the husband in this case, any good leader is going to, take all of the input from those that he's responsible for leading. He's going to listen, right? He's going to, and I think it's important to say, he's going to genuinely listen.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to take into genuine consideration what what those around him have to say. He's going to take in other information that he may have himself or that people have brought to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to weigh all of that lovingly, and he's going to make what he thinks is the best decision.
And he's also going to take responsibility for the decision, which is my favorite part.
Right.
Because it's not my fault.
That is, yeah. I mean,
even if you choose what I wanted, it's not my fault if it goes bad.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, and I think that is kind of the two sides of the coin that men especially need to kind of be aware of, is that if your wife is submitting to you as the head of your household, and that ultimately you are making the decision, and if you make the decision and you make the wrong decision, well, then you need to own it. That's not your wife's fault. If your wife told you to make some decision and you were like, okay, I let's go with that. I'm going to go with that decision. Well, it was really up to you in the end.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to add that, there is kind of getting into the corner topics.
Oh, the corner question?
Yeah.
What's the corner question?
So what happens if a wife is purposely manipulating her man to attempting to manipulate her man to maybe cause him to make a bad decision? Is he still responsible for the bad decision that he made? I mean, I would say ultimately yes.
Yeah, I would say yes.
But it is kind of crappy. And and again, in a healthy relationship, this would not be going on.
Yeah. I say it's her sin, but his responsibility. Because even as the wife, you're supposed to submit to a non-Christian man.
Whether, yes, in a marriage, you're saying.
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
so I think the reverse of that is the man needs to be not assuming the wife is wanting bad things for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, in a healthy relationship, I think that is exactly what would be going on.
Yeah.
But as we know, not all relationships are healthy. So, and I think that's something that, again, as a husband and as the leader, just as if you were the CEO of a company, right? I mean, I don't really think you think about it. It's not exactly the same thing. And I know somebody will be like, that's not the same thing. Okay, yeah, it's not the same thing, but there's a lot of similarities, right? I mean, your role as CEO is, you are kind of orchestrating the bigger picture, but you're also keeping your finger on the pulse of the health of your company, right? And you're making sure that you're checking in with all of your VPs and your directors and your management and all those things to kind of make sure that you have a good pulse of what's going on so that you can make the right kind of bigger picture direction, decisions that need to be made. And a marriage is no different. So if your marriage has gotten to a point to where your wife is manipulating you, maybe you should have seen that coming, right? Because,
hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, because that's really your job as a husband is to, kind of be steering the ship, right?
Yeah. Although, I mean, I've known a few women that are pretty crafty and
pretty manipulative.
Yeah.
And
right. They've really, really blindsided their husbands with divorce after, starting to really they lost weight. They started really taking care of themselves. And then, so the husband was thinking those were great things. And then they were doing it for alternate reasons.
For other reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's probably signs too.
Yeah. So I say, I mean, I think you would know, if you're in it, again, this all kind of goes back to if you're in a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Would you spot that if those sort of changes are occurring? I mean, I think most of the time, yes. Could you have a super manipulative wife who's kind of just snowing you for most of your marriage? I mean, I guess, but I don't think that's the norm. I think that's the exception.
Those are the bell curve people.
Yeah.
That I like to talk about.
The bell curve people.
Yeah, the people on the outskirts of the bell curve.
Yeah. So where are we going? What I don't know where that was going. I mean, I think we were just kind of trying to lay out the basic structure of what we think it looks like. And I don't want to, yeah, like I said, I think if your wife's going to submit to you, then own it. Right. But, like then you're making the decision and you're making the decision. But, the other side of that is the wife genuinely has to be accepting of it.
Yeah.
And don't go behind your husband's back and, try to manipulate a different situation or different decision or, act like you're agreeing with it. And then you're really like in the background manipulating and trying to kind of steer it in a different direction.
Yeah. I think, definitely no manipulating, but I think it's okay to say that you disagree, but you're going with it. Like, I think it's okay to be known that, like, that wasn't, during the conversation, that's going to come up anyways.
What is?
That, like, if we have a difference of opinion, but then you make the final call, but I still disagree. I'm allowed to disagree.
Yeah.
But I still agree to go with your decision, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that is the important takeaway is that, I don't, no husband should be, ruling with an iron fist and, basically saying, I do not care what you think. I'm not going to hear you. That's not the way to do it, right? Because I don't think you're being a good leader at that point because you're not taking input. Your wife is here as your helper.
Mm-hmm.
So, use that. Use her as your helper. Help her. Let her provide you with information that you might need to know and helping you in your decision making. And so that means you genuinely need to be open to that. So, and she's not always going to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not always going to be right either. Sometimes I tell us to turn left and we really should have turned right.
Yeah.
And then you get a little disappointed that you listened.
Sometimes, yeah. Well, that's what I said. I mean, that's ultimately that's the thing that the husband has to, come to terms with is that, you still, you need to know. And over time, I think, as you're kind of maybe as a new couple and you're feeling this out as a husband, right? Like maybe you don't really have full trust in your wife's wisdom or, kind of the input she has. And, but that's something that I think is going to grow over time. And,
Well, for both.
For both. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's for both. Yeah. I don't mean to be picking on the wife. I think for both, but just, it's something you have to kind of lean into and start doing.
Yeah.
And let it, just kind of believe in faith that, if you're really trying, you're going to get there, right? And you're going to make some mistakes along the way, and that's on everybody's part, right?
Yeah.
So if you as the husband, if your wife, as in, Ava's example here, like she told you to turn left and you were like, okay, I'm going to take your advice here. And you turn left and that wasn't the right thing to do. Don't immediately be like, oh my gosh, she's never ever going to give good advice because you kind of have to look at it over the span of time, right? Because now the next like 20 times and she's like, we'll turn right and you're, maybe most of the time you're kind of giving him good input, right? So don't.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's going to nail it 100% of the time in life.
Yeah.
That's just the facts.
Life would be super boring if that was the case, honestly.
Yeah.
If you always got it right and you were always perfect.
Or if we always agreed.
Yeah, or if you always agreed.
Because a lot of times we have discussions, we ramble around the kitchen counter and, force each other to think from the different perspective, and it's good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know if yeah, I mean, I think it's good to. It's just good to have discussion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can learn a lot just about having kind of open discussion without, and it can be a challenge at time with some. I mean, there are some topics that you may talk about or have to make a decision on that are not really that. I don't know if I want to say important or emotionally taxing or what it is, and and those are. Can be fun discussions to have. And then sometimes there are discussions that are like very emotionally taxing and difficult to have. Right. And, but they're still important to have nonetheless.
Yeah. And sometimes just opening it up for discussion, like maybe it matters to you, but it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had that certainly in our marriage too, sometimes when there's, you may come to me with something and you're like, hey, I want to do this thing, or I think we should do this thing. And, sometimes my reaction is, yeah, let's talk about it. Let me tell you what I think about that. And there's other times I'm like, I do not care about this topic at all.
Yeah.
You just tell me what you want to do here. And, yeah, we'll go with it. And if you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, you're wrong.
Yeah. Some things are low risk.
Yeah. But in that case, I mean, just to use that as an example, would you feel so, if you come to your husband and you say, I want to go turn my hair green, whatever it is, let's just pick on something like that. And the husband says, I do not care, do what you want. And the wife goes and has some kind of like awful experience with the hair. It doesn't turn green. It does something else, right? It's like, is that the fault of the wife or is that the fault of the husband?
Oh, well, I mean, you got to bring it back to the husband.
So,
yeah. Well, but because you said you didn't care, so the outcome to you didn't matter. It didn't turn out how it was supposed to turn out, but you can't be mad that the hair turned some weird color because you were okay with it. You were okay with it being green. If it was supposed to be green, but there was a mix up at the hair shop and it didn't turn green, it turned blue, like you were okay with the attempting to make it green.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is you don't feel the husband has a right to be angry if you come home with blue hair, not because you went with the intent of getting blue hair, you went with the intent of getting green hair.
Yes.
And then he's like, oh my God, it's blue. And blue is my least favorite color, and I can't believe you did that to your hair.
Right.
And
this seems very familiar. You do remember I went in, I had blonde hair, and I was like, we're going to just freshen up the blonde, and I came home with red hair.
Yeah, your hair's been a hot mess over the years many times.
Yeah, it's currently a hot mess.
Yeah.
It's currently in a transforming state. But yeah, and I mean, in that particular situation, I can guarantee you the wife is probably more upset than the husband.
Yeah, and I'm just using this as like a stupid example.
Yeah.
For the question, which was, is it the husband's fault? So I think what you're saying from your point of view is if you go to your husband and you say, I am going to go to the hairdresser and turn my hair green, and your husband says, I do not care, go do it if you want.
Yes.
And then you come home with blue hair.
Yes.
And your husband has a freak out, like that maybe it's not justified for him to have a freak out because he didn't say, well, hey, is there any possibility that they're going to turn their hair blue? And that I would not be okay with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
still no, because I think if your genuine intent, because hair, like you act like it's simple, but it's, it's chemistry, it's creativity, like it's not straightforward turning your hair colors.
Yeah. But at what level of micromanagement is okay? So like in that scenario, so let's say the husband is like, yeah, sure, I don't care, but I'm going to accompany you to your hairdresser and I'm going to stand over your hairdresser and I'm going to grill them on every chemical they're putting into your hair to make sure that it is doing what the intent was.
In some cases, that's still not going to help because the hairdresser is obviously doing what she thinks is going to give you the proper outcome, and sometimes, but also hair is just temporary. If I were to come home with blue hair, I would immediately make a new appointment. I would have scheduled a new appointment before I left.
But we're not talking about hair, right? We're just using this as an example.
Well,
it's a dumb example, but we're just using it as an example. Like apply it to anything. But what is the appropriate level of micromanagement in that situation?
Yeah, I feel like that much micromanagement speaks to a lack of trust, and that's going to cause other issues in life.
Yeah. But then is it really the husband's? So I don't feel like you can really have it both ways, right? You can't, as a wife, say, well, the husband said do it, and then say, well, it's the husband's responsibility if it went sideways if the husband wasn't micromanaging it.
But if we take that back to a CEO and you have a team of 15 people, like you can't micromanage everybody. There has to be some level of trust.
Yeah,
that
agreed.
We agreed on something and I'm going to go follow that through.
Yeah. But then it went sideways. And, you know, in the business world, maybe that, you know, VP or director or whoever it was gets fired. In the marriage, that's
you
not,
can't fire me.
It's not an option.
No.
Right.
No.
So
I don't think this is like apples to apples applicable.
How so?
Well, because you can't fire me.
Right.
Yeah.
so that's why I'm asking. We're kind of getting into
you can't
the corner question, right?
You can't micromanage everything because, to be fair, I try to have my appointments while you're working so that at the end of the day we have our free time together.
Yeah.
So you can't go with me. You have to have the discussion, and then there has to be a level of trust in there that I am applying what we discussed. And you also have to realize that in life, things get a little sideways sometimes out of nobody's fault, really, of the two of us.
Yeah. Right. So, but that's why I'm trying to kind of bring this back to,
yeah,
the husband. I agree. I don't think the husband needs to be in there micromanaging. Like, I'm sure you would probably be mortified and upset if I was in there for some reason, standing over, you know, your hairdresser's shoulder, scrutinizing everything they're doing. You know, and that is not something I've ever done, by the way, for anybody who's wondering.
No.
But, you know, we're just using this as a kind of an extreme example of like, but you saying that if you came home because the hairdresser screwed up, that it's still the husband's fault if he said it was okay, or maybe not his fault, but that he has no business getting mad about it.
I mean, you were seemingly okay with the opportunity to alter my hair, understanding that it's chemistry and creativity, and it doesn't always it's not always predictable. So yes, could you be disappointed? Yes. Could we then have another discussion when you're like, Avis, your hair is blue and not green. How did this happen? And then I would explain to you that there was a mishap and that I also wasn't happy with it and that I would be remedying that.
Yeah.
So I think you were okay with the experiment. The experiment went sideways, and then you have to be okay with giving me time to fix that.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where I was trying to drive the conversation, which is I think the appropriate response of the husband in that case is, you know, yeah, I said it was fine for you to go get green hair. I understand that your hairdresser screwed up. Mm-hmm. They made a mistake, right? And yes, it's very frustrating that you now have blue hair when I didn't say I was fine with blue hair. And, you know, then in a leadership role, just think as if you were the CEO of a company, like, well, what are we going to do to rectify the situation, right?
Yeah.
Now we're going into triage mode, and we're going to figure out what we're going to do to fix it together if necessary.
Well, yeah. And so back to you might get fired. I think also there's like a whole, I mean, I'm not in the corporate world, but does this 3-strike rule still apply? I mean, if it's like, if your wife kept saying to you, I'm going to go get green hair, and kept coming back with a different color and was like, oops, I don't know how that happened. Like, that would be a clear indication that there was something else going on and not just like the chemistry and the creativity went sideways.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe this is a fun one to go down. So if that were happening, so let's keep going with this example. So the wife is like, I'm going to get green hair. She comes home with blue hair. The husband and the wife figure out a plan together for how you're going to rectify it. Now I'm going to get my hair fixed to turn green, and now I come back with pink hair. Mm-hmm. And then like you go through it again and then come back, and now I come back with orange hair or something, right? So like, how does that get rectified? Like at some point, you know, again, if we're talking about the business world, you're going to be like, okay, you're out.
Yeah,
not
this
an
is
option
a pattern.
Here. This is a pattern. You're doing something manipulative, or you're not doing your job well. You know, and the CEO is going to have the choice of firing that person, not an option in a marriage.
Right.
Or, you know, getting in there and kind of micromanaging it a little bit, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would think in that case, you start to question the hairdresser.
Yeah.
You'd be like, do you need a new hairdresser?
Yes, from the husband's point of view.
Right.
Yeah,
and then if you get a new hairdresser and it continues, well, then the problem is the wife. And then there's another discussion to be had.
Right. Like, why do you keep telling me you're doing this to your hair and doing something completely different? Right. Because
Right.
there's something underlying going on.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so that becomes a question of does she just want weird colored hair and she's afraid to be like, I just want weird color hair and I don't care what you think. And then that's a problem too.
And that's a problem. Right. Yeah. Problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does that get resolved? What if a wife does that?
Yeah. Then that's a leadership and following problem. She's clearly not on board with you making the decision.
Right. Yeah. Which is ultimately the root of the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And so basically what happens from there is now you got fireworks in your marriage.
Yeah.
Your marriage is in jeopardy. You know, as much as you may not want to have your marriage fall apart, that's kind of the direction you're headed in, because now you're not kind of doing what the, you know, the natural order of the marriage should be.
And then instead of a discussion, you have a really hard conversation.
Yeah.
And that's never any fun.
No. Yeah. You might have a hard conversation, and depending on where that goes, and you might be having hard conversations with attorneys, and then it's just all a cluster from there, right?
All over blue hair.
All over blue hair. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's.
Oh, I did have blue hair not that long ago. You remember for like 3 days?
Yeah. I know you had
that was a really bad mistake.
A whole cluster. Yeah, that was a disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
but
sorry,
again,
I just forgot I had blue hair.
Yeah. I mean, briefly. This is not what that's about, right?
No, I know it's not, but it just sparked a memory, and I was like, oh God, yeah, I did have blue hair not that long ago. Briefly.
As we have spoken about before on this podcast, video cast thingy, whatever we're calling this. I mean, you know, you're getting older, right? We're both getting older. Like, there's just challenges, right? And you know, and if we're talking specifically about hair, I mean, there's just challenges, right? Like, there's, you know, like you said, your hair's in a transitional state. You have been the last couple of years going through, sorting through, trying to figure out how that's.
Oh, it's been a year. It's only been a year.
A year. Okay.
It seems like a long time.
Yeah.
It's only been a year.
You specifically, you know, you typically have had dark hair, and because you dye your hair.
Correct.
And, you know, you've had.
Well, to be correct, my natural hair color is dark, but since I've been about 26, I've been developing these sparkly hairs, I'll call them.
Yeah. And as you've now, you know, you're 50 plus.
I'm 50. You're plus.
Well, you're still 50 plus, because you're not 50 today. You turned 50 before, and you're now plus that, working your way towards 51.
I reject your theory.
I'm not wrong.
Okay.
So you've kind of had this, you know, just dealing with that, and it's just an aging thing, right? Like your body is no longer tolerating the hair dye that you've been putting in it for 20 years.
Yep.
And so now we're having to transition to some other stuff going on, right?
Embrace the sparkly.
Yeah.
We're embracing it.
So
but yeah, Rob's been a trooper. We had what they call a chemical cut. The girl like bleached my hair, and it all basically broke off.
Yeah, that's what I said. It was a cluster.
It was about an inch long.
It was a cluster, yeah. And
it was horrible.
Yeah. And I mean, you've always had nice, long, beautiful hair. And
yeah.
that whole thing was a cluster.
Yeah. Even a year later, it's still a work in progress. It takes a long time for that to
but
recover.
You know, maybe we should specifically. I mean, I don't know why I stumbled onto the hair thing as the example. Maybe subconsciously, I don't know. But,
well, it's very conscious for me every time I look in the mirror. So I can't blame you.
But maybe that's a good kind of like, you know, just real world thing, and you know, and talking about, you know, the husband, and even something kind of as stupid as hair, right? I mean, I don't want to say hair is stupid, but in the big picture, it's a stupid thing, right? And like
it is, but it's very like it's how people identify.
Sure, yeah. I don't mean to downplay it in terms of that. I just mean it's not a life or death situation, right? It's not. but something that's still very important to you as a woman and, me as a man and your, kind of how attractive it makes you, right? Which is important.
Mm-hmm.
And, so yeah, I mean that whole kind of event, like you started going through this, like you said, you had some hair craziness happened. They tried bleaching your hair or something, or she did something to it. Your hair basically like, very, very short, broke off. Like you went from like kind of this great kind of dark, beautiful hair to now at one point you had blue tint.
Yeah.
Very short hair.
Yeah.
Which was, and you shed some tears over that.
Yeah.
And, but, is in the leadership role, right? Like, what did I say? Like, okay, well, we're going to fix this, right?
Yeah.
Like, we'll fix it. We'll figure out, like, you go come up with a plan and come back and let me know what the plan is. And that's basically what you did. And that would involved, trying some different products, getting hair extensions, right? Like, and not inexpensive.
No.
To do.
Not inexpensive, but I mean, compared to dyeing my hair, I was going every other week and dyeing it. It's actually not that much more expensive.
Yeah, but the point I was making was that from a leader point of view, you're coming up with a plan with your wife to help fix the problem.
Yes.
Right, which is really what I mean.
And even though it's temporary, that temporary period is quite long. Yeah. So it's really... Yeah. It's taken a toll. Going back to our last discussion on our last ramble session, the confidence of being sexual, right? Like when my hair was not, I mean, this is still just acceptable. It's not what I desire. But when it was in an unacceptable state, like that was kind of hard for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And yeah.
And too, like you were giving me grace because normally in our relationship, we're free to comment on each other's appearances and making sure that the other is understanding like what we desire in a partner. And you were just like, oh my God, your hair. Oh my God, your hair. Oh my God. And I was like, finally, I was like, I can't, like, you have to just not, because I'm going to cry daily if you keep doing that.
Yeah. I was in a little bit of shock when it first happened.
Yeah. Well, we both were.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, things like that too. Just like a temporary, like I can't, my mental capacity can't take that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I didn't quite finish saying what I was going for. That's okay. That's okay. I'm gonna
talk. Yeah.
So yeah, I think just the final kind of point on that I wanted to make is, in that situation as a husband, right? So you're going to have to make a choice, right? So if something like that happens, that's very devastating for your wife, maybe not your most favorite thing either as the husband, and so you help come up with a plan, and that plan is, maybe you need to go get $1,000 worth of hair, treatments done, for example. And then, as the husband, you're going to have to decide, well, is that in the family budget? Is that something that's affordable for us to do? And, and think about the big picture well-being for your family. And, the answer could be no.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is just hair.
Yeah.
You could just let it grow.
And you might just have to say like, hey, we're just going to, it'll grow. And if if we're dealing with this for the next year and a half, so be it. But that seems like a better place than, and I just want to say that just to say, like, it doesn't, like, fixing it doesn't necessarily mean fixing it. It just means making a decision and then sticking with that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever that may be. For us, just the point in life that we're at, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. No big deal. You got a plan, go take care of it, whatever it costs, right? But but I think, that necessarily might not have been the answer when we were younger and we were raising kids and we were doing all those things, right? So I think you got to kind of look at the point you are in life. And,
well, hopefully you're not dealing with trying to go gray in your early years when you're trying to raise kids. God gives us these things in stages, Rob.
Yeah. So... All right. So, I don't know, any other corner topics on that? I mean, just getting back to how is conflict resolution ultimately decided in a marriage.
Well, I think that goes back to our foundational statement. You just have to have the hard conversations. Somebody needs to be the leader. The leader should be the man, in my opinion. And I mean, that gives me as the woman a sense of insulation as well. That's kind of nice when you embrace it.
Yeah. Well, I think, right. I mean, I think that is we kind of made the important point early on, which is if you are embracing that, then that's really, if you are deferring to your husband on all these decisions and, you as a husband, don't take that flippantly, right? It's your job to be the leader. And, if you tell your wife it's okay to do something or you direct your family in a certain way, whether that is, in agreement with what your wife wants you to do, or if it's in disagreement with what your wife wants you to do, and, right or wrong, you kind of need to own that. That's the other side of it, right? And on the wife's side, right or wrong, she has to accept it also because she's deferring to her husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the I can't remember the name of the account we were talking about, like the Be Happy Sometimes or whatever it was. I don't know if it was Happy. I can't remember what it was, but I mean I think that would kind of not make her happy to to hear that, because she just doesn't believe, she seemingly doesn't believe that scenario exists, that there is no headship of the marriage. And I just don't understand, like, how do you get it done if there is some important decision that needs to be made, and a husband and a wife are on opposing ends, and that does happen.
Oh
right?
yeah,
I'm not saying it happens. I mean, in a healthy marriage, that's probably going to be very rare.
Well, yeah, it won't. It'll be like the corner topics, not the foundational topics.
Hopefully,
yeah.
But I think every marriage at some point, if you're together long enough, you are going to end up where you guys are kind of on opposite ends of an issue.
Sure.
And there's too much of a difference. There's just no kind of having some common agreements on what the right thing is to do. And, that's what I was trying to kind of push back on this person, is like, how does that get resolved? And they seemingly have no answer. They just kind of kept giving me non-answers of, we just lovingly talk it out. And I'm like, okay, but like at some point, I mean, just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of some imaginary scenario where that could be the case, but
like the things that I'm dealing with conflict-wise outside of our marriage could clearly be pointed to because there's nobody in charge. Like when there's nobody in charge, like you struggle to find order.
Yeah. Is there nobody in charge?
I don't know. Is there? I feel like everybody is in charge of a part of it.
Yeah. Okay. I just had a little blip of our camera there. I don't know what happened there. It overheated. So
you're questioning, isn't there somebody in charge? That's just a corner topic we can avoid.
Oh, you're talking about the thing going on, kind of external that we're not talking about publicly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, what I would say is there's somebody in charge on this end, right? And I mean, I'm partially involved in this thing, and
kind of saying, well, between the two of us, you're in charge. I mean, that's obvious. I just meant, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, but we've got another party involved, who, they have a different opinion. I am not married to this individual, right? We are not in a business with these people. This is just, there's just something going on that we're trying to sort out. But even there, we're getting resolution, right? Resolution is coming together from talking about it long enough. But that's not really a good example, because that's not the example I'm talking about.
Okay.
Which is, that's not a marriage, right? We're talking about in the context of a marriage.
But I was just pointing out that when there is somebody in charge and there's the head of the household, like order is much easier.
Yes. Yeah. That we definitely agree with.
That's all I was kind of making the comparison of.
Yeah. So, so how I think, I forgot what we were saying. I think we were just saying that, like, how does conflict resolution happen like there's just gonna be times where like a decision has to be made, and if you're in this idea that you're like, well, we're just gonna find a way to work it out, not always. You're not, right? So like I feel like those are just marriages that are setting themselves up for failure.
Yeah.
If a big enough issue comes up, because you are saying, you know, I believe this is a woman that I'm talking to. I don't know that for sure, but I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you are saying, my husband does not have headship over me. And if we don't have agreement, and I don't know what the husband position is, if he's, you know, submitting himself to his wife, which I think also is going to cause some problems.
Mm-hmm.
But if neither of you are submitting to one another, you know, and just allowing a decision to be made, like I don't know how that ends in anywhere good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because these things sometimes, I mean, it's going to fester until it gets resolved.
And I think in that case, the woman is not acknowledging her basic need of security. And if you try to take that security into your own hands, the stress of that will eventually crack you.
Yeah. Yeah. For the woman specifically, you're saying.
Yeah.
Because and we've talked about that before, because you don't believe that women are necessarily wired to handle the same. I would say, I mean, I think women are wired to handle certain types of stress. I mean, I think women, you know, did you just talk about like child rearing and certain things? Like, I think women in some aspects of child rearing handle the stress much better than men do, versus other aspects of child rearing. For example, men are probably handling the stress better. And I think that's true in a lot of things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you know, the kids recognize that too. If they're sick, they call me. If they need money, they call you.
Yeah. You know about our kids. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have friends. That's the basic.
For all kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that is true. Yeah. I mean, our kids, they will reach out to me for certain needs that they have. Not just money. I mean, there's other things.
Yeah. I mean, I was simplifying
I know. But yeah. And then there's other things, you know, they need their mom, right? Sometimes they need their dad, sometimes they need their mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's because we're different, you know, different roles, right? And in women, and that's just the truth.
We handle the stresses differently, and when we were raising the kids, they clearly saw that, and you know, we demonstrated in our marriage that yes, there's things that dad does, and there's things that mom does, and that's why we do those things that way, because you're the head of the household, so. And then they also were aware of that. I mean, we've never hidden that from them. If they wanted to ask something, and we'd go ask your father a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is my opinion, but we need to ask dad.
Yeah. And we've never, I mean, we've pretty much, I mean, as we've talked about before on here, I mean, we didn't always have it all figured out, but you know, we got it figured out. And, you know, I mean, that for the majority of our marriage has been that is the organization of our marriage, right? I mean, you defer to me ultimately, and the kids.
In my rational mind, I have my moments where my emotions get the better of me, but the next day I usually come around.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you have your emotional outbursts, and I think, I mean, I don't think that's any different. Like I said, I mean, I think as a leader, that's like those are just real life, right? And you have to kind of just be aware of those things, right? Yeah. So, like, if you guys are having some kind of disagreement about something, and your wife has a complete freak out, you know,
I feel attacked.
Let her have the freak out, right? Let her have the freak out.
I'm going to recover eventually.
Let her, you know, she'll recover, and then, you know, you're just going to camera died again. So I don't know. I got to figure out what's going on with that. We might need to wrap this up here.
Yeah.
What were we just saying before the camera died again?
Your wife having emotional outbursts.
Oh yeah. So yeah, if your wife's having an emotional outburst, and you know, just let her have it, right? Because as the leader, you know, you've got experience with this, right? She's going to come around. She's going to get more rational, right? Yeah. So just, you know, let her have her tantrum, and you know, it's going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to present myself like Miss Patty Perfect. Like
no.
Even though yes, this is what we've agreed upon, and I'm very comfortable with it, my emotions get the better of me sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's very true of probably all the relationships out there, right? Nobody's perfect. None of us are perfect. We're going to have our moments. We have our intellectual ideals and understandings, and sometimes emotion, takes hold, and all that can kind of temporarily go out the window, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think I just more am to kind of speaking to men on that, just, dude, that's real life, right?
Yeah.
Let her have the breakdown, and then when just come back and say, hey, yeah, I'm still the leader and this is what we're going to do, right? And she'll probably be more agreeable to her once she has her freak out.
And thankful that she was given the space to react and then come back around.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess let's wrap this thing up because the camera's clearly having a rough day here, which is really disappointing because it was a brand new camera we just got to try out.
I know.
So I'll have to figure out why it's overheating. Okay. Well, until next time.
Bye.